Welcome into a live edition of Bet. I am Doug Kezirian here on the Las Vegas Strip. Crazy time in sports this week. Championships decided on back-to-back nights with the NBA and the Denver Nuggets. And then last night, right here down the street, the Vegas Golden Knights, in just their 6th year of existence, hoist Lord Stanley, and celebration ensued on the Strip, as you would imagine. And then just a day break, and then we get the U.S. Open. And we're going to discuss that momentarily. We'll also talk some NFL with Eric Moody and get a Bills live report as well. That can wait, but we got to talk another golf major, and this one is in Los Angeles, a rare occurrence at the LA Country Club. And for that, we bring in two-time U.S. Open champ Andy North live from LACC. Andy, good to be with you. Let's start with the winner of the last major, Brooks Koepka. Obviously, he did not deliver in the Masters, kind of let that lead slip away, but did hold on to win the PGA Championship. He's a two-time U.S. Open champ. What are you anticipating from Koepka this weekend in L.A.?
Well, Doug, I'd be absolutely shocked if he wasn't in the mix coming down the stretch on Sunday. The guy's an absolute killer when it comes to playing major championships. When he's healthy, he's got a chance to win every time he plays. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he plays this week, and I think that he's got a great opportunity to be our champion yet again.
You know, it's funny. I know a couple sharp players, professional bettors, who are actually fading Koepka in matchups. Now with other elite guys, but he is the third shortest favorites at 9-1 to win this weekend. Now the top two, no surprise, Jon Rahm and Scottie Scheffler. Yeah. Scheffler's been excellent in terms of tee to green, but his putting has been terrible in this season. Who would you take between those two guys? Who in your mind has the edge? Because obviously Rahm recently won the Masters, but Scheffler does have a green jacket on his resume.
Well, you could sit down and argue this for days upon days. Both players are unbelievable. They're both playing well. I really do like Scottie Scheffler because I think one of these weeks his putter's going to be really hot and he's just going to run away with something. He's been hitting the ball unbelievably well. The performance he put on at Memorial was maybe as good a ball striking tournament as ever been played, and yet he didn't win because he didn't putt particularly well. These are greens that second shots are so critical to get the ball close to the hole here. Great iron player. He'll have a great opportunity also. But Jon Rahm, you can't ever think that he's not going to have a chance too.
Yeah, both those guys, obviously, like you said, it's almost the conversation like LeBron and MJ you can have for days. Let's talk about the hole number 6. And it obviously is occurring on a U.S. Open. So we know about the rough. And it's legendary. It's the signature part of a U.S. Open. So it certainly punishes and penalizes players. 6 is a drivable par 4, but you can't really see it. How do you think guys will approach this hole in terms of going for it with the big stick or kind of playing it conservatively given the rough and other concerns?
Yeah, basically it's a 330-yard par 3 that plays downhill. There's a huge hill that you hit over the top of and some trees on top of that hill. We've seen a lot of players go for the green in practice. It's basically a 3, 4, 5 iron type of layup, and then a 60, 70, 80-yard wedge shot. But the green is so small, it's not an easy wedge shot once you lay it up. So I think you'll have a combination of players going for it. It's just one of those holes. If you hit a great shot, you make a birdie. If you don't, you make a bogey very quickly. Huge bunker guards in front of the green, lots of deep rough around that bunker. It's going to be fun to watch that hole played. Yesterday, one of the players hit it on the green at 6 with a 3-wood. The 7th hole is a par 3 that's going to play almost 300 yards. Hit driver there. So he hit a 3-wood on a par 4, but then had to hit a driver on a par 3. So it's an interesting stretch of golf to watch. I think a lot of people will go down there and sit and watch those 2 holes.
You know, it's funny because even if you do hit that miraculous tee shot, there's a chance you can still end up with a par and miss a makeable birdie putt and things like that. So it's gonna be interesting to see who wants to feast or famine, but no risk it, no biscuit, as they sometimes say. Let's talk about the course component. This is a rare situation here with the LACC. Not a lot of guys have experience playing this course. I know Tiger walked it with a member in February just trying to learn the layout. This is not sort of in the rotation, if you will, or something that players frequently play. What do you think, and then given the thick rough, what do you think the cut line will be for this particular U.S. Open?
Well, Doug, I really don't have any idea. It's so much going to be the setup of this golf course. I think you could have this place set up where you could have some really, really good scores, or they can stick some pins in places that even par would be great. I would suspect the U.S. Open, normally the cut's 3-4 over par. I would think it'd be in that range here.
So typical U.S. Open. And just a quick question, like when you don't know a course or you don't have the same level of familiarity that you do some of the other U.S. Open courses that are either in the rotation or something you've been able to play, what are some approaches that guys do? Is it like cramming for an exam and trying to get practice rounds in last week, talking to locals? What's sort of the approach? Caddies go ahead and scout? What's sort of the mindset and how they go about things?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you've got to figure out to play enough practice rounds that you're comfortable. There's not a shot on the golf course that you don't have a good feel for. If we went to a major that I hadn't played, a lot of times I'd show up maybe Sunday morning and actually walk the golf course before I actually played any holes on it. So there weren't any surprises once you got out there in your practice rounds. Quite often I'd walk it backwards. So you'd look at the green complex first and then kind of judge what type of shot do I want to be playing in here. So it might make a difference on what you hit off the tees, if you laid up to bunkers, you've got aggressive, that sort of thing. So it's just playing enough practice rounds. These guys in today's world don't play as many practice rounds as the players did years ago. And they go so much more on just pure yardage that between the player and the caddy, they figure out. I think this is one of those weeks, the more practice rounds you can play here, probably the better off you'll be.
Truly fascinating. Now, I asked you about the cut line. What do you think the winning score will be for this U.S. Open?
Again, they could set this up where even par could win, or I think you could see 16 or 18 under par. I think it'll be, someplace in the middle, 6, 7 under par, 8 under maybe. The weather looks like it's going to be awesome all week long. There's not going to be a ton of wind, the normal 10, 12 miles an hour off the ocean kind of stuff. We won't see any crazy 20, 25 mile an hour cold, rainy days like we have the last few majors. So it's set up to be a fantastic week. It's a really cool golf course. I think folks at home are going to really enjoy watching this one.
All right, so I'm on Ricky Fowler just because of the odds at 55-1. He's been playing so great, so many top 20 finishes almost in all the events he's played in. Who's your pick to win this?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. Ricky was my long shot for a show we're doing coming up. I think Max Homa is a player that can win here. He's played the golf course a lot. He shot 61 here years ago in a college tournament. The guy has been playing some great golf. He's a fantastic iron player. It's going to take great iron play to win here. I think his game fits the golf course nicely. Well,
it sure does because he owns the course record at LACC with a 61 a handful of years ago. But you're not alone. There's been a lot of action on Homa. His odds have dropped from 45-1 to 22-1. Now, some of that is performance-based as well earlier in the season, so not just solely action, but there has been a popular ticket. Andy, always popular insight for our viewers. Thank you so much for sharing it. Enjoy the coverage this weekend.
Doug, thanks. See you later.
All right, and as many of you know, one of our co-hosts and on this show and also Daily Wager, Anita Marks, thoroughly involved in golf and handicapping the majors and every tournament, frankly. So we want to share and relay some of her picks because she will not be on this show, but we want to share some of her insights. So Tyrrell Hatton, in terms of the outright market at 28-1, I know a lot of sharp wagers have come in on him and Finau for that matter as well. She likes Finau plus 280 to finish in the top 10. Koepka plus a quarter to finish in the top 10. As Andy North was just saying, he expects Koepka to be right there, at least in the conversation on Sunday. And then Fowler, certainly a popular play. He's been top 20, like I mentioned, in nearly every tournament this season. He's been excellent. All right, so that takes care of the golf coverage for this live edition of Bet. Let's pivot to the NFL, and from there we go out to the Ralph, or the stadium formerly known as the Ralph, and sometimes as well. Alaina Getzenberg, our Bills reporter, joining us now. There's been some interesting sort of storylines and narratives this week surrounding Steph Diggs. So I want to get your opinion there. So there was talk like he wasn't going to report to camp. Then it boiled over onto social media. Just take us through his demeanor and what you've seen from Diggs here with the Bills.
Yeah, Doug, so after Stefon Diggs was not out at practice yesterday, he was there the entire time today. I watched him throughout today's mandatory practice, and really, you wouldn't have known he had anything going on at all. He did his normal things. He was dancing during stretching. He was hanging out with teammates, talking. He did do individual drills today, but he did not participate in the team drills. That was the only thing that was different from normal, but otherwise, Stefon Diggs was here. He was practicing, and Coach Sean McDermott McDermott did share that it actually was an excused absence yesterday. So really overall the drama is dying down a bit here. Stefon Diggs is in the building and they are working through their problems.
And you obviously have that reference point, having covered him for over 2 years, so good insight on your end. Now, this is not something that everyone just said no comment, no comment. Josh Allen said it was something that was off the field, an off-the-field issue. What's been their interaction today?
Completely normal. They did their handshake that they usually do, something Josh Allen's known for. Josh Allen threw him some passes during those individual drills I mentioned. It was very normal, very teammate-like, very friendly. Steph was spending time with some of the younger wide receivers. There was nothing abnormal at all to speak of. And, Josh made sure to reiterate yesterday when he spoke to us that he loves Stefon Diggs and he's got his back always. And I think that was really shown in practice today. It was normal. They were doing their normal thing, from the handshakes to catching touchdown passes, so nothing much abnormal to take from today's practice.
All right, great insight as always, Alaina. It's mid-June. You think it's just a formality, the beginning of some practices. Oh no, major stuff for one of the significant teams in the NFL and contenders on the betting menu. Alaina, thanks so much for the perspective and insight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's discuss a little macros. We bring in Eric Moody, fantasy and betting analyst at ESPN. So Eric, it's really interesting because we know that the Bills are in the conversation every year, 13-3 last year, in the discussion to kind of get over the hump, whether it's be past the Bengals or past the Chiefs. They're right there. But part of me also wonders if they missed their window. Now, I don't think we're there yet, but you do run out of opportunities. Dan Marino famously said you get to the Super Bowl once early in your career, you think you're going to get back there every time. No, at some point, other teams catch up. The stars align, whether they draft the right quarterback or free agency or just the health sort of luck goes their way. So I guess just one thing to discuss. I mean, they're in the 9-1, second shortest odds in the AFC behind Patrick Mahomes and those KC Chiefs. How do you feel about the Bills entering this season?
Well, you brought up a really good point, Doug. So I do believe that the championship window is closing. Even with the quarterback as dynamic as Josh Allen under center, since Josh Allen has been in Buffalo back in 2018, the Bills have a 52-24 record. You fast forward to 2020. Since then, you look at Allen. He's averaged 270 passing yards and 2.2 passing touchdowns per game. He's also exceptional as a runner. And one thing about Buffalo, they've done a pretty good job of surrounding him with offensive playmakers so he can be successful. They got a solid offensive line. They've got a great defensive front. But I think the main pain point, Doug, really revolves around how this Bills team has performed in the playoffs. You look at Allen. He has a 4-4 record in the postseason. And I would say, really the biggest challenge for the Bills is that they're playing in the AFC, they play in the AFC East, and this 2023 schedule. So I'll elaborate. You look at the AFC East, it's going to continue to be a challenging division. We got Aaron Rodgers, that's here, with the New York Jets now. So they've gotten an upgrade. Also, you look at this schedule. They have to play against Super Bowl teams from last year. So they got to match up against the Eagles and the Chiefs. And they also have the matchup against their old offensive coordinator, Brian Dable, with the Giants. So that's going to be a tough matchup. You look at the Dolphins. They've strengthened their defense by adding Jalen Ramsey. And they also have some significant road games. They got to go overseas in London, to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They also have to travel from Buffalo to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. And I'll close on this. You look at their schedule, it gets particularly tough, I would say, from November to the end of the season, where their last 6 games, 4 of them are on the road, which is a significant change because they're used to the freezing weather, wind, snow, you name it, in Buffalo. So when I combine all these factors, you look at Josh Allen, even though he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, the AFC is tough, the AFC East is tougher, and with this schedule, it just does not bode well for their outlook in 2023. So I would agree the championship window is tightening up.
Yeah, I like how you said that in the gerund form. It's tightening. It's not closed. You said closing earlier. I agree. I worry about some of the injuries and the hits that Josh Allen takes, particularly because of his running ability. Now, he doesn't miss a lot of games, but you wonder if that elbow injury affected throws, led to some interceptions. They were 13-3 last year with 2 fluke losses. The game with the Vikings and the Hail Mary on 4th and long, and then also kind of that Dolphins game. Although Miami played well, they had so many. They really had every chance to win, they being the Buffalo Bills. But there's other competition, as you mentioned, the division and the conference. I'm giving myself pause, though, because look what the Denver Nuggets just did, right? How many times people would have said their window closed? Jamal Murray injury, things along those lines. The Western Conference, certainly super competitive, but things broke right for them. Jokic took a step forward again. So the window's not closed. I agree with you, but it is tightening. and things going to have to, at some point, you have to put up or shut up with this championship window because that's where the bar is set in Orchard Park. Let's look ahead to some Week 1 action involving the AFC East. We know the Bills play on Monday night, but other division opponents are in action. We'll start with the Eagles visiting the Patriots. So New England's expected to be a distant fourth in this division, although they changed some things with the offense, particularly Bill O'Brien now calling plays as opposed to someone really who had no experience. Eagles coming in, defending NFC champs, lane 5 in Foxborough. How would you play this game?
I don't know, it may come as a surprise, Doug, but I'll actually back the underdog Patriots here to cover on their home field in the season opener. So Tom Brady is back in the house. He will be honored during halftime of this game. So the Patriots, they should feel pretty good about the relatively close spread. Now, this is a Patriots team, thinking back to last season, they went 8-9 without a single win over a team that went to the playoffs. So I do see the Patriots keeping this game close. Doug, you mentioned about Bill O'Brien, who's back in the fold of Bill Belichick. They've had ample time to really rebuild this team's offense, which I think will be important. Now, talking about the Eagles, you and I would both agree they're obviously a very, very talented team. Jalen Hurts, he's got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. He's got a solid offensive line in Philadelphia and a running game and a stout defense. But I'd like to close on some betting trends. Historically, the Super Bowl runner-up has struggled in Week 1. So since Super Bowl 34, the runner-up has an 18-14 record in Week 1. Now, if we were to dive deeper, also, they're 4-18 against the spread, so I would back the Patriots in this spot. Although, I'll kind of close on this. I'm curious to see how this line will change and adjust if the Patriots sign DeAndre Hopkins.
No, it's a good point. And 5 is a dead number in NFL odds making. We all know 3 is the most common margin of victory, around 18% since the extra point moved back its distance to its current lengthy extra point. But that 5 is sort of that no man's land. I would love Philly in this situation if it was week like 3 or 4 or later. I hate that it's week 1. Eagles are a very difficult opponent. But if you have the entire summer and you're Bill Belichick, I think this Patriots team will be ready. I think you're on the right side here. I wouldn't bet it just because I think New England's pretty weak and Philly has both offense and defense. But to your point, alluding to the Super Bowl hangover numbers, there's something to that, right? And I just can't fade Belichick as a 5-point home dog against a unique offense that he's had the entire offseason to prepare against. So it's a pass for me, but I certainly would lean to the Patriots like you are. Now, Dolphins are short favorites at the Chargers, less than 3, so it's 2.5. I'm not a fan of Brandon Staley. I think he's a bad coach, frankly, and I think his days are numbered. What the Chargers have done in the second half has been embarrassing with that offense. Now, I know he's a former DC, and he's outsourcing. Kellen Moore comes over from the Cowboys. He's the OC. But I just don't like what Brandon's done in this sort of potential high ceiling, and especially the lack of adjustments after halftime. So I think the Dolphins are better coached, but I don't want to lay points on the road against a very good Chargers team. I'm passing again. So exciting, am I, right? What about you? How are you on this game?
Well, no, you're on to some. You made up some really, you made some really good points. I'm leaning more towards the over here, and here's why. You've got, you mentioned Kellen Moore. He's the new offensive coordinator. From Dallas. With the Chargers, like he's known for his explosive downfield passing game. So he's got Justin Herbert, who's a great vertical passer. He's got Mike Williams. He's got Keenan Allen. They also drafted Quentin Johnson out of TCU, which is an electrifying player. So with Moore at the helm, I know Herbert had a disappointing 2022 season. I do believe in 2023 they will really focus and prioritize more of the things that he does well. So I expect a ton of points to be scored here. If you're looking at the Dolphins, we saw how explosive offensively they were last year with Mike McDaniel in his first season there. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, we all know what they're very capable of. This is a team that scored, they're finished with the 11th most points, despite Tua only starting 13 games. And so the Dolphins defense did struggle last season, allowing the 9th most points per game. And also, they made some defensive changes. They've had some additions. They got a new defensive coordinator coming in with Vic Fangio. To be candid, Doug, I just don't know if that's going to be enough. So I do expect a high-scoring game here. I would bet the over. So I think it's going to be very explosive with these two teams, given what we've seen from them offensively last year.
Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. I expect offensive fireworks. I do expect Herbert and that Chargers offense to take a step forward under Kellen Moore. And Tua, when healthy, this Miami team was legit. And all those weapons, they're a really impressive offensive unit. So I like that overplay as well. Let's go to Monday night with the aforementioned Buffalo Bills, a 1-point favorite at the Jets. Oh, I'm not sure if you've heard, but New York has a new quarterback this year. His name's Aaron Rodgers. Of course, he's playing on Monday night on ESPN. Coin flip game, essentially. I lean to the Bills. I think it might take the Jets some time, but I don't know if there's a, hangover for the Bills as well. This game, it's coin flip, so I'm not going to get involved. What about you?
Yeah, it's. I think you and I are aligned here. Like, if I'm going to pick a team, to bet on, I would go with the Bills to cover on the road against the Jets. And so, one thing about Buffalo, I talked earlier about the success that they've had with Josh Allen under center. I would say they're essentially bringing back the same team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which is good. Plus, you have year 2 of Josh Allen and offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey, so it'll be even more continuity there. And also, I do like the offseason additions that Buffalo has made. I think he can open things up even more for Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis in the passing game. For one, I'm excited about Aaron Rodgers, joining the New York Jets. But, he is a 40-year-old quarterback, and it would not be a surprise that the Jets get off to a slow start. I'll close on this, Doug. One thing about Rodgers, he's really struggled in his last 2 Week 1 starts, losing by a combined score of 61-10 and failing to throw a touchdown in both of those games. So with the spread this narrow, I think it bodes well for the Bills to get a win on the road. So, if you force me to choose something, I back them to cover.
Yeah, I can see that, but I'm actually going to keep an eye on some of the preseason action, although they're not going to play a lot. I want to see how this Jets team look, and also Robert Saleh and even Rodgers handling all the increased attention that's going to come with New York, and if that defense can be duplicated, because it's a giant upgrade. It's not just an upgrade, it's a giant upgrade at quarterback. Eric, thanks so much. Really appreciate that insight and all the picks and breakdown of those games. All right, we're going to wrap up the show like we usually.
Thanks, Doug.
You got it, buddy. We're going to wrap up the show like we usually do before I let you go, and it's going to be my favorite Week 1 play because I didn't want to get too involved in those AFC East games, but I do like the Niners laying 3 at Pittsburgh. Now, I like that the Steelers have sort of figured out the successor to Big Ben and where they're headed in that direction, but the offense was pretty limited. They had some great comebacks in the second half of last season, particularly against the Raiders on that Saturday night game, but for the most part, Pickett is limited, and maybe he's going to take a giant step forward this year. We shall see, but I think this San Francisco team is a juggernaut. The Niners have gone to the NFC title game 3 of the last 4 years. The only time they did not, when they were ravaged with injuries. Jimmy G, I think they are taking a step back at the quarterback position, but it's going to be very small. They're taking a step forward in other ways, like throwing the ball downfield. I actually hope it's Sam Darnold. I think with all those weapons, he just needs to be a game manager. I have that much respect for Kyle Shanahan. He'll put Darnold or Purdy in the right position to succeed. I think they'll be well prepared, as will Pittsburgh, but I think the Niners go in there and take care of business. Steelers might be a popular home dog with some sharps, but I also know the sharp money does not like to fade San Francisco at full strength either. I think the Niners are going to be a wagon in the NFC as long as they stay relatively healthy. That's going to do it for this edition of Bet. Enjoy your U.S. Open this weekend.